What's going on, everyone? Just jumping on before the episode this week to let you guys know, for whatever reason, the camera stopped working at about 5 minutes. So anyone watching on YouTube, I'm incredibly sorry. Anyone that's listening via audio, you will not be affected. So I actually mentioned this a couple of times throughout this episode because I've been playing around with the camera settings and things like that. So only myself to blame, and hopefully I'll have it sorted for next week. So tune in for the episode, and I will share later.
Oh, it's the Can't Get Any Worse podcast on blast, giving you the real talk, no holding back. Can't get any worse, we'll make you see. There's always a silver lining. We'll set you free, so join the movement. Let's change the game with the Can't Get Any Worse podcast.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Can't Get Any Worse podcast. Happy Tuesday to you all. I hope you've had a lovely weekend and a lovely Monday. Monday for me, as per usual, about the middle of the day. So we're not sitting too bad. It's not like the other week where we recorded in the middle of the night and almost got arrested by the cops. Go back to last week's episode for a little refresher on that one. But quick housekeeping off the top. I don't know how visually this is going to come out on YouTube. Your boy got himself in a little rabbit hole of a tutorial on YouTube the other day of how to set up. So little bit of behind the scenes for you guys. I record this all on a GoPro just because I've had a GoPro in the bottom of my drawer for like 5 years now. And I never used it up until the podcast started, and I had no money to go and buy a fancy podcasting camera. So I was just like, this will do for now. Now we're coming up to like 2 years into the podcast and I'm still using it. So, saw a little tutorial pop up of how to set it up better for like studio recording. And we'll see. It looks a little bit different from the tests that I've run. I should have done more tests up until the recording, but you guys know me by now. I leave everything to the last minute, and then when it happens, I go, fuck, I should have done a little bit more to make that better. But fingers crossed that this is visually going to be the best podcast episode we've released to date. So let's just roll with that. But what else has been happening? Westy, it's been this should just be like a parenting podcast the last few weeks, hey? But I guess when you have kids, that's all you've got to fucking talk about, I suppose. But story of the week that I jotted down, and I'm like, fuck, I have to talk about this on the podcast. So I don't know if your kids have had this recently at school or whatever, but Westy's school has like what do they even call it? It's like a nationality day or something, or it's basically where the kids are encouraged to come to school dressed in like their like native attire, I guess, or like I don't fucking know. Like you know what I'm trying to say, right? Like if you come from New Zealand, like wear something with like a silver fern or something on it. Or if you come from France, wear a fucking, what are those hats? What is that? I don't know. I was going to say baguette, but that's the bread. So just ignore me. If you know what that hat's called, write in. It's in my brain. I just can't think of it right now. Anyway, you get the picture. So Westy, for whatever reason, I don't know if a couple of his mates at school are from New Zealand or whatever, but since he came home with the letter saying, this is what's happening on this date, so I've known about it for a couple of weeks, he goes, yeah, so I've got to go dressed as like someone from New Zealand. And I'm like, no, you don't, buddy. You're Australian. And he's like, no, I'm from New Zealand. And I'm like, mate, you were born on the Gold Coast. You're Australian. And he's like, nah, that's not true. And then my darling wife, Nikita, everyone give it up for Nikita one time, she pipes in and goes, oh, if you want to go as someone from New Zealand, you're allowed to go as someone from New Zealand. And I've gone, nah. Hold on a second. We're not getting into any of that fucking woke shit that Westy can go to school and identify as a cat tomorrow. We're not fucking doing it. And she goes, no, well, I'm from New Zealand and I'm his parent. So technically speaking, he has some New Zealand heritage in him. And I go, let me stop you there. That is inaccurate as well. Exactly what I just said to Weston. You were born in Australia as well. So you're Australian, buddy. And she goes, yeah, but my mum's from New Zealand. And I've gone, yes, correct. And she goes, and my sister was born in New Zealand. And I've gone, yes, correct. But where were you born? And she goes, Australia. But I'm from New Zealand. And I'm like, oh my God. And it was just like, I was banging my head against a brick wall because, don't get me wrong, technically speaking, I suppose, yes, that is true. She's from New Zealand. But she was born in Australia. So it's a fucking, now that I'm saying it out loud on here, I feel like I'm tiptoeing on fine ice here. But obviously, you guys know what I'm fucking trying to say. He's from Australia. He needs to go as an Australian fucking representative. Like, we've got to represent the Australians here. So Nikita's like, well, why doesn't he go as Australian and New Zealand? And I'm like, oh, it's just fucking so confusing, like half a costume of each nationality. And I'm like, mate, just go as an Australian. And then we were going back and forth, the three of us arguing. And I go, you know what? I don't care. Let's just send Westy to school in blackface, and then we can deal with the consequences after, because you guys didn't want to stick to our nationality and go as an Australian. And about a day or two later, Nikita came up to me and she goes, I've been thinking about it and I'm going to start encouraging Westy to go as an Australian so nobody looks at him weird and goes, why the fuck is he dressed as like fucking he's about to bust out the haka or something. So I'm glad everyone turned around. And get this right, the day came, or the day before technically, I go, have we got his costume or outfit, whatever you want to call it? And Nikita goes, oh yeah, he's just going to wear like a long sleeve black shirt with a Broncos jersey. And I go, hold on a minute. Broncos jersey is not, I guess technically speaking, it's an Australian like team. Brisbane is in Australia, Brisbane Broncos. And she goes, yeah, I found out like 6 of the other kids are wearing a Broncos jersey. And I'm like, what the actual fuck? Like, it should just be Jersey Day. But then I did see the silver lining under all that. I was like, well, technically speaking, there are a lot of New Zealand players in the Brisbane Broncos. So at the end of the day, Westy got his wish and he went as a New Zealand Brisbane Broncos player. And I got my wish because he just went as an Australian Brisbane Broncos player. So shout out to the Brisbane Broncos. If any of you boys want to come on for a yarn one day, hit me up. We're going to get into that a little bit later as well. Some exciting news in the podcast front. Again, it's probably not going to come to reality, or I'll leave it to the last minute and go, holy shit, Joe Biden's coming in for a chat and I have not got an extra fucking chair for him to sit on. So, that's quite harsh on the back of my throat this morning. What's going on there? This morning's been a little bit crazy. This is the first podcast I've recorded in a long time where I've had to do a bit of work prior to it. So, yeah, I did a small install this morning. Well, it was more just go finish off a job from last week, but ripped into that, got it done, knew I had to come back here, flick the switch for you guys and turn it on for the podcast. But yes, but let's stay. I just got distracted for a second there, but let's stay on this, all right? Because this first chunk is going to be heavily kid-based. We've got a lot to touch on. Back on Westy, his last day of school was Friday, so he's officially on school holidays now. Another 3 weeks off. I swear he just had his last lot of fucking school holidays, but anywho, who am I to judge? So, the whole school term, again, some of his little mates, I don't know how they've gotten away with it because he goes to a private school. Let's give it up for all the private school boys, hey? Yeah, no, nobody cheered. I actually was doing a joke a couple months ago in my set where I was like, have we got any private school boys in the room? And then, fuck, I don't even know how I worded it. It was working pretty well. I should pull that one back out of the arsenal soon. Come see a show. Anyway, Westy goes, some of my mates have got a fucking mullet. And obviously, mullets are lame from my generation. A couple of people had them, but they were never like, they were more like the kids that weren't doing the greatest, if that makes sense. But now it's a genuine fashion statement. Like, you see rich people with mullets and they're just like glamorous, gorgeous, well-maintained mullets, right? Now, anyone that's seen my 7-year-old son, Weston, he doesn't have long hair at all. He's just got your standard little boy haircut. There's nothing outrageous or amazing about it. It's just you look at that haircut and you go, that's a simple little boy's haircut. Nothing can go wrong with that. He's not going to get in trouble at school. If it starts to touch his ears, let's give it a bit of a trim. But he's fucking nagged us. And Nikita and I said a couple of weeks ago, we go, when it's school holidays, we'll get the clippers out and we'll shave the sides so it looks like a mullet. And he was fucking ecstatic. He's like, this is the best news I've ever got in my 7 years of existence. And school holidays have come around. We didn't think anything of it. We go to basketball Saturday morning, and one of Westy's best mates rocks up to basketball training with a fucking mullet that he got cut in on Friday night as soon as school finished. And of course, Westy's gone, wait a minute. You said I could get a fucking mullet when school finished. How come my mate's got a mullet and I'm still rocking this little boy's haircut like I'm about to go and suck the priest off at fucking fuck, I just blanked on the word church. What is up with my brain this morning? This is what happens when I have to work before the podcast. I get mentally zapped. Anyway, he comes home. Westy's basketball this season I fucking hate it. So basically he's got training at 7 a.m. in the morning, and then his games are at like 10 or 11 o'clock. So we've got to come home between training and game. Stupid as shit, but I don't run the basketball club. Anyway, we come home from training and Westy goes and gets the clippers out and he's like, we're fucking doing this. So Nikita's hurt her hand. So I've gone, she's the hairdresser of the family, right? So I've gone, well, I'm going to have to tap into my unperfected skill of being a barber and trim this guy's hair. And it's not too bad. I shaved a relatively decent mullet for what he had to work with. But in saying that, it's the most pathetic mullet you've ever seen in your life. There's no length in it. We've just shaved the side of his head. It looks like he's gone for a haircut, and then halfway through he's checked his bank account on his phone, and he's gone, fuck, my pay isn't in this week. I can't afford for this haircut, and the barber's gone, get the fuck out of my chair and get out of my shop. That's exactly what his haircut looks like at the moment. But the other big thing on the kid front, if you follow me on socials, at Jimmy Misson on Instagram, go give me a follow. Trying to build that thing up as well. I've been stuck on that amount of followers for probably 6 months now. So if you are listening to this and you don't follow at Jimmy Misson on Instagram, chuck us a sneaky follow. It's free, much like this podcast. I decided this week, my kids have found themselves in this crazy rabbit hole on YouTube of all these rich kids in America demolishing their fucking parents' houses and building these secret rooms. And my kids don't understand. Like, they're looking at my walls and they're like, we can just punch a hole in this wall and then we can build a whole room behind there. And I'm like, no. I'm like, stand on this side of the wall. That's the wall. Then you've got your 100 mil wall and then you're fucking in our other room. Like, there's no mysterious room like they have on YouTube. They build these other rooms on the other side of the wall so it looks like that. And they're like, I don't think you know how it works, Dad. I don't think that you have been in the building industry for like 17, 18 years now. You definitely don't understand how a generic structure of a house works. There's more than 100 mil to work with. We watch YouTube. We watch these kids. Everything on YouTube is 100% factually correct. So there was no convincing these kids that that's not how things happen. So I was kicking around on Monday or something, I think it was. Oh, it was, yeah. I finished recording the podcast and then I was kicking around waiting for the upload to happen and stuff. And I'm looking around, I'm like, what can I do in our house to make them a secret room to get them off my back? And obviously we know about it. I'm a cabinet maker by trade, represent to all the cabinet makers who fucking hate their lives just as much as I do. I'll put it out there. If you're a happy cabinet maker listening to this episode, send me a DM and I will give you a free ticket to my next comedy show, wherever that might be. I thought about this the other day. Well, I was building some cabinets and I was like, this fucking sucks. And I was like, I'm going to make a rule when I start selling tickets to comedy shows and stuff. If you can show me in some way that you're a cabinet maker, you get free entry to my shows. Just because I know how much it sucks dick to do all day, every day. Anyway, back to the secret room. I've looked into my pantry, and at the bottom of our pantry, the bottom shelf, we've just got all these like big, bulky, shitty items that they can't fit anywhere else, so we just put them down there to be forgotten about. And so I'm like, fuck, I could just empty that shelf out, build a little door there that swings open, throw some $10 LEDs in there from Bunnings, and then these kids are going to come home and think it's the sickest thing ever. And I was like, yep, I'm doing it. So Tuesday comes around and I spend about an hour on Tuesday cutting up all the material, getting it all ready, come home, then I install it. Again, probably another hour, go to Bunnings, put the LEDs in, and I'm like, holy shit, they are going to fucking love this thing. And I built a little shelf on the front so I could put a couple of boxes of like cereal and stuff. So when you open the door, the cereal comes with it. So if you open the pantry, it's inconspicuous. It's like, oh, there's just cereal down the bottom. There's definitely no secret door there. Anyway, I start filming this, right? Because life's about the socials. Life's about social media these days. So I'm like, this would be a funny little reel for the week. And so I start filming and I'm talking up a huge game. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to build this room and then I'm going to hide in it when they get home. They're going to come and find me and be like, secret room. Dad's in the secret room. Now, when I emptied this shelf out, I was like, that is a lot smaller than I remember building it. And I also thought that I built, it's a weird fucking thing to explain. So I'm not going to bore you guys with it, but basically I thought I built a giant cavity in there, which turns out I was a lazy cunt back in the day and didn't do. So I'm like, I don't think I'm going to fit, but I've committed to the bit. So I've built it all. Night times come around. They're about 10 minutes from home. So I'm like, fuck. Because I said to Nikita, I'm like, call me when you're 10 minutes from home. She called me and I've rushed. I've set my camera up to film me climbing in the secret room. And yeah, go and watch the video if you want to see me struggle to squeeze into this pantry. Embarrassing shit. But long story short, I didn't fit. Didn't fit in the cupboard. So I turned the camera around. I'm like, I'm just going to video them finding the secret room because I'm a fat cunt. And I was prepped for the biggest excitement of my life. And they were excited. They were excited when they first found it. Then they climbed in there. I've quickly gone and got my camera and I'm filming them. And I go, oh, boys, what do you reckon about the secret room? And then they didn't reply. And I'm like, oh, fuck, this is going to suck on the video. And then I'm like, do you think it's cool? And Westy just lets out a little, yeah. And I was like, oh, cool. That's the fucking sickest ending to the video that there could have been. So, yeah, all that time and effort just for a, yeah. Made it worth it. But to be honest, it's probably a funnier ending than them genuinely being excited to see the room. Anywho, the big news. I'm going to have a sip before this because this is fucking amazing and you guys are going to love it as well. All right. Big news of the week, right? And I don't want this to come across like braggy or like... What's the other word? I don't want it to come across braggy or like just being a dick, but I like to bring you guys along for the journey. And this is a pretty big thing that's happened in my life. One of my dreams that I've wanted to come true forever finally came true over the weekend. And I finally made the choice to go and purchase my dream car, which is a Lamborghini on Fortnite. That's right. I bought myself a Lamborghini on Fortnite. And to say that I've driven this thing all weekend is an understatement. Like this thing, it fucking drives so fast. I'm unstoppable on Fortnite now that I have my Lamborghini because like, I don't know, as a kid, I always wanted one and I was starting to think I'm never going to get one. And yeah, Saturday night it popped up and I was just like, nah, I'm buying that thing. That thing is mine. So I'm now the proud owner of a Lamborghini STO on Fortnite. So, yeah, I don't know what that fucking mumbling was just then, but just ignore that and just know that I am now cruising around in a Lamborghini. So my life is complete. Thank you guys for coming along on the journey with me. I could not have bought that without your support on the podcast and supporting my comedy journey. Let me fix my posture up here. All right. Just so you guys know, I'm stressing this whole episode about how the video is going to come out. But it's going to be fine. Stop stressing. All right. Weekend comedy. Here we go. I have an apology to make straight off the top here, right? I plugged on the podcast last week that I had Thursday night at Last Night on Earth and Saturday night at Home of the Arts. Now, it would appear that Saturday came around. We're going to get to Last Night on Earth, so nobody stress. Saturday came around. Now, it's getting quite late in the day, and again, a little bit of a peek behind the curtain for you guys. Most comedy nights have a group chat where the lineup gets added to it. Any crucial information, addresses, start times, if anyone's got to go late, go early, blah, blah, blah. That all gets sussed out in a group chat on Messenger, right? Now, about 3 o'clock Saturday rolls around and I'm like, fuck, it's getting late for this group chat. I'm like, what's going on? Because normally this room runner does it pretty early. And there was one time that he did it late. Literally last week when I did Matic Brewery down on the Friday down there and there was the crazy traffic. He hadn't made the group chat by like 4 o'clock or something. So I messaged and I was like, hey, mate, just checking I'm on at Matic tonight because I haven't seen a group chat. And he replied with, oh, sorry, mate, I've been at a funeral all day. I just haven't had time to do it. I'll get onto it now for you. And I just felt like the biggest piece of shit in my life. Same room runner for Saturday night. So I'm like, there is no fucking way that I'm messaging him going, hey, bud, where's the fucking group chat? I got shit to do. So I was just sitting there and I'm like fucking waiting. And then like 5 o'clock came around, right? And to get to this gig, I would have had to have left by, I don't know, 5:45. So it was time for me to start fucking having a shave, getting dressed, getting ready, blah, blah, blah. And I've gone, nah, surely it's this Saturday, right? I haven't got my dates mixed up. I never get my dates mixed up. People with autism are so fucking good with dates. So I've scrolled back to his message where he's offered me the spot and I see Saturday the 22nd for Hoda. And I was like, huh, what a dickhead. What a dickhead. Spent this whole week getting ready for this big, amazing gig. It's going to be the gig of the year. And then find out that it's this week. What a dickhead. So if anyone did go down there in the hopes to see me and I was not there, I did not fucking die in a horrific accident or something like that. I was just stupid and got my fucking dates mixed up. So, again, I'll plug it at the end of the show. I'll be at Hoda this Saturday. But again, we'll touch on that. Back to Last Night on Earth on the Thursday, right? Let's have another little sip of this. I don't know. She's a bit rough today. Maybe because it's cold. It's just burning my throat. All right. Last Night on Earth at Southport. Thursday night. Got to the gig. There was maybe 12 people there. And then the comedy was about to kick off and maybe 4 of them left and because they didn't realize comedy was on. So there was 8 people there. Normally, you're like, oh, it's fucking, that sucks dick. But this venue, I've done it before and no matter how small the crowd is, it just seems to be, they're there for the comedy. And you could almost go up there and say whatever you want and they love it. But I was first cab off the rank after the MC, of course. And I was a little bit nervous, I suppose, but because I was trying some new gear again, a couple of those newer jokes that I've been working on. And MC gets up, and these 8 people are fucking zoned in on what he's saying. They're laughing at every little bit he says. And I'm like, oh, fuck yeah, this could be sick. I get up there, and the first 6 minutes of my set, crush. I'm like, this is amazing. Like these 8 people, all they wanted to do on that night was go and watch comedy, and they were living their dream at that stage. And I was like, fuck yeah, this is sick. And then I had to start my new gear, which didn't go as well as the first 6 minutes, right? But they were nice enough to be like, we can see what you're trying to do. That's pretty funny. Work on it. So it's the first 6 minutes, which took me fucking ages to get tight. And you might have a little gem in that pile of shit that you just delivered to us. But I appreciate everyone that was at that venue and gave me some little giggles for the new shit. But in saying that, that's probably the best I've got the new shit since trying it. So I was happy with how it came out, happy with where it went. Then I finished on one of my classics and again, won them back over, got a big laugh. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're probably sitting there going, Okay, that sounds sick. That must have been the highlight of your night. Incorrect, okay? This was the highlight of my night. Friend of the show. He was a previous guest back when we did guests, right? Mr. John Peacock from the Northern Rivers. I think his episode was even called like the King of the Northern Rivers or something like that. One of the nicest blokes I've met on this comedy journey, right? He's always super nice to me. He's always given me advice. When I first started running rooms and stuff, he was one of the blokes I reached out to. He gave me every fucking bit of information I could ever need, right? Now, for a bit of context, prior to the show, we were sitting around a table, as you do, as comedians before a show, and we're just shooting the shit, right? We're going back and forth. We're making each other laugh. Oh, this is funny. Did you see this the other night? Blah, blah, blah. Anyway, for whatever reason, I was just like, oh, yeah, I've really, like, the last month or so, I've really tried to think of ways I can promote myself on stage without pulling away from the show. And I'm like, I just feel like a dickhead if I get up there and I'm like, follow me on Instagram, listen to the podcast, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I don't want to interfere with the show like that. Now, the marvellous John Peacock is standing there listening to all this, and he's the MC for the night. So I get off after my 80% crush, right? Minus the new gear, I did pretty well. This room all seemed to like me and potentially want to follow my comedy journey. So I don't plug myself at the end, but Mr. JP remembers the conversation prior, and he jumps up on stage getting ready to introduce the next act, and he goes, oh, how good was Jimmy Missing? Everyone give it up for him one more time. Everyone claps. And he goes, now, John Peacock is the nicest guy I've ever met, right? One of the nicest guys. He gets up there and he goes, yeah, so everyone should go give him a follow on social media, things like that, at Jimmy Missing. Gives me a mad plug. I'm like, fuck yeah, thank you. Thank you, JP. You're the man. And then he goes, he's also got a podcast that he does. He releases it weekly, called the Can't Get Any Worse podcast. So if you're into podcasts, go give it a listen. And I'm like, holy fuck, thank you. Like I'm getting ready to pull a sneaky 50 out of my pocket and slip it to him. And then old JP finds himself in that spot you get sometimes when you do public speaking, is sometimes you say like a line or two too many and you should have pulled the parachute. And JP goes, yeah. So for his podcast, he gets people in. He gets in for a chat. They tell their stories, things like that. He gets all sorts of people in. And then this is where he stepped one line too far. And he goes, yeah, so he's had like all sorts of guests, and he's trying to think of guests that I've had on other than him. And then he stopped, like an audible stop, like this. He's gone, oh, he gets all sorts of guests in, like blokes, mostly blokes, really. And I've gone, what? And the room runner has looked at me and he's gone, this is the sickest plug ever. And he's gone, and then he said something else. He's like, yeah. So he just gets heaps of blokes in and has a chat to him. And I'm like, oh my God, thank you. Now everyone thinks that I'm like the biggest gay podcast in Brisbane, which, hey, no knock on it. If you guys want me to be the biggest gay podcast in Brisbane, I'm here for it. But it was just funny that fucking what I thought was the sickest plug in history just went to like, yeah, he just fucking talks to mostly blokes, really. And then I was like, oh, thank you. I'm getting the fuck out of here and going home. But yeah, if you want me to talk to mostly more blokes, let me know. It's probably this is probably a good spot to interject all this, right? Two big things bubbling away, right? The podcast, I've started this solo journey on my own, and I like it. It's going good for me, right? I don't know if you guys are liking it. You all seem to be coming back in the downloads, so I'm assuming you don't mind this new format. But the last, let's say 3 weeks, right? I've been tossing around the idea of getting another 2 or 3 seater couch beside me over here on the left and bringing back the guest format. But don't think, I don't want to set it up like this, right? Don't hear that and think there's going to be a guest every fucking week, because that's what turned me off having guests originally, is like the stress of trying to find someone, then the stress of finding someone that you click with and you think you can talk to for an hour or more, and then them not bailing out on the episode. Just fucking a list of shit, right? So the guest episodes are only going to come, A, when I can find someone I want to talk to, and B, when it like comfortably works for both parties. Like, it's not something that I'm going to force, but it's like I'm obviously going to put time and effort into it to make it work as best I can. So on those weeks, I'm thinking every Tuesday you're still going to have this episode, solo episode, right? But when I do get a guest in, so you guys don't miss out on the week of comedy, the motivational clip, the fucking premature premise, the general format that we've structured now, right? So you guys don't miss out on that. I'll release the guest episode on probably like a Thursday, I suppose. So then you're getting 2 podcasts that week, which again, I think will help the podcast grow, not only with shares and stuff from potential guests, but also dropping 2 episodes a week is an easy way to climb your way up the download ranks. Not an easy way, but it helps, if that makes sense. So stay tuned for that. A little bit of more fucking studio renos potentially over that side. All I really need is a couch and a second camera. Everything else I can make work in here, I reckon. But yeah, episode 100. What are we up? I think this will be episode 95. Episode 100, we've got our first guests locked in to be back. So we're kicking off episode 100 with a fucking banger. You guys are going to love it. The other big thing, this past week, had my follow-up meeting with Distillery Road Market, where we held our show, 2 weeks ago now? 1 week? Yeah, whenever it was. You guys were there for it. You were along the journey. I came out of that follow-up meeting. That is easily the best meeting I've ever been a part of. When I say this venue has 100% bought into wanting comedy to thrive there, like, that's a fucking understatement. Like, that, and like, this is no word of a lie, right? I went into that meeting. They had all these ideas, and I somewhat had to peel them back and go, well, let's try with these first few and then see how that goes, and then we can grow from there again. And I'm like, holy fuck. Like I got to my ute and I was just like, I was punching the air. It was that type of meeting. It was incredible. So we've locked in the next 2 shows there. We're going to try it this new way, I guess, with the new setup and all that sort of shit. And stay tuned for those dates. I'll probably announce those next week once they're set in concrete, things like that. But yeah, just it was so sick to have. That's the first time I've really had a venue 100% buy in, and almost, well, they are like pulling money out of their pockets to throw into a stupid little comedy show that I want to go and tell my dick jokes at. So I will, it's made me thrive to do better in that venue as well, and give them a better show. Because this was another thing, and it's stupid as fuck that I did this. I did a show end of last year, right? And a couple of the comedians on the lineup, I wish I never fucking listened to them. And if they're listening to this, this is directed at you. But they go, this is just a fucking like open mic night. Like, you're putting way too much effort into it for what you're getting paid. So at that stage, I was doing graphics, spotlight, stage, microphones, like the works, right? And they go, the venue should be doing all this. You shouldn't be doing all this. And I was like, that's a pretty fucking shitty attitude to have, right? But I'm like, I'm relatively new to all this, so maybe I am doing too much. So this first show I did at Distillery Road, I tried to like distance myself as much as I could, right? And like, I felt like such a dick doing it. So like, literally in this meeting last week, I was like, look, whatever you guys need from me, like, I will fucking come and sweep the floor during the week if you guys need me to. Like, I'm all in on this shit. So, but yeah, big things coming for that show, and I'm keen as fuck for it. Yeah, just so sick. Just had to get that out there. Again, I'll announce the shows in the next couple of weeks, but let's touch on a couple of media things like music. What have I got this week? Music, podcast, and movies. So strap in. It's going to be a big one. Oh, it's getting better the more I drink. I think that's how alcohol works. Music front. Again, it's country music is fucking killing it at the moment, right? The last probably 10 years, it's really picked up. I I remember when I went to school, everyone was like, fuck country music, blah, blah, blah. And I had to listen to Alan Jackson on like turned all the way down. But now everyone's like, oh, fucking how sick is country, blah, blah. And big ones from this week. I mentioned it last week, so I'm not going to harp on it. But Luke Combs' album dropped. So he released a single last week. Now the whole album has dropped, Fathers and Sons. Holy fuck. I listened to this on Friday as I was building cupboards. It's genuinely one of the sickest albums I've heard in recent history. Just the way that this bloke can storytell. There's a song on what's it called? I'll look it up while I'm talking. But yeah, there's a song towards the end, and it was just so well summarized what he was trying to say of like how a dad wakes up before your kids wake up. You go to work and they're like, oh, dad's fucking gone. And they're like, and then he tells the story of like, oh, I wonder how the lights stay on, or I wonder how I get to fucking do this cool thing like play sports or blah, blah, blah. All I ever do is leave. Go listen to that and try and fucking keep a dry eye. So again, yeah, it's crazy the little things that you take for granted when you're a kid and then you become an adult. Like, and I remember at the start of this podcast, I used to listen back to him. I'm like, you're a fucking idiot for even saying that shit. But I used to talk about how like I was like a latchkey kid where I'd get a key and I'd get home. I'd leave after my parents left, and then I'd get home before my parents got home, and I was like, oh fucking poor old fucking Jimmy over here. But obviously to keep the lights on and keep food in the fridge, they had to go and work their ass off. So yeah, I remember back in the day, and this podcast has helped heaps with this like personal development shit of just realizing shit that I used to dwell on and be like, oh, woe is me, just because other cunts that I hung around with. Everyone has to have a story, but like the more that you spend narrowing down on your story, going, woe is me, or just go, like, look at it from a different perspective and go, holy fuck, like, I genuinely see that now. Like walking through the shops, I used to stomp my feet and be like, why the fuck couldn't I get this toy? And now both my sons are doing the same thing. I'm like, oh, like, fucking money and shit like that. Like, yeah, so that was a bit of a tangent again. But go listen to Fathers and Sons by Luke Combs. Every song on there is a banger. But that song in particular got me. The other banger of the week, Pink Skies by Zach Bryan. Again, similar deal. It's hard for Zach Bryan to release a shitty song now. I don't know what is up with the dude, but he just releases track after track. And this song is just a slowed down, sad, emotional song about like again, people are going to come at me on the comments, but I think it's about like, it's obviously about someone dying because it mentions a funeral and things like that. But yeah, again, just the way that this guy story tells and almost leaves the story open to your interpretation of to what it means. So yeah, go check those two out. Zach Bryan, Pink Skies, which is just one song, and then Luke Combs, the whole album. I can't fucking narrow down one song. Go listen to the whole thing. Both absolute killers. Oh, this one thing about this couch, maybe I should get a cushion behind me, but I seem to like slip down throughout the episode. So I've just readjusted again for all those audio listeners. Let's keep on the audio front for now. Podcast of the week. I said last week I might try and start plugging some podcasts that tickle me on the insides that I've listened to this week. For me this week, and a lot of you listening are going to fucking hate it, but Fighter and the Kid, it is probably one of the first podcasts that made me get into podcasts, genuinely. Like, here's a fun fact. I discovered Joe Rogan through the Fighter and the Kid. That's how long I'd been listening to Fighter and the Kid for. Now, the internet hates Brendan Schaub for some reason. Long story short, for those that don't know, Brendan Schaub, he trained to be in the NFL, right? He, like from his college career, trained to be in the NFL, made it all the way to a practice team with the Buffalo Bills, right? Okay, amazing. Most kids would fucking kill to get a chance at the NFL like he did. He goes, he got cut or whatever. So he goes, what am I going to do now? I'm a giant man. The UFC was just coming to like the forefront. So this was back in again, don't quote me, but 2008, 2009, somewhere around then, I reckon he probably debuted. He made it to like top 10 heavyweight contenders in the UFC. So not only has he almost made an NFL team, he's made top 10 UFC heavyweights in the world, fighting all sorts of monsters that we talk about these days as the greats. He got a knockout over Mirko Krokop, which is insane. Then he decides to start this whole podcasting journey with Bryan Callen, he was a successful comedian back in the day. Again, he's had his issues. He's been cancelled. Some people hate him. I don't know why. He's funny as fuck on podcasts. I'll admit this. His podcasting is a lot funnier than his comedy. Again, though, he's funny as fuck. So they've paired up. They've started doing this podcasting journey. Brian's gone, you're pretty funny. Why don't you start stand-up? And Brendan's gone, oh, my God, that's literally been my lifelong dream. Starts doing stand-up. Starts selling out like weekends and shit all across America, all over the world, really. And this is a fucking long-winded story, but it grinds my gears when I hear people hate on these guys. Anyway, so they've got all this way, all through all this shit, and they've just hit their thousandth episode, which is unreal. Like, I'm approaching episode 100, and I'm like, that's insane to me. To know that I finally got to episode, well, I'm not there yet. Something could happen in the next few weeks, but yeah, there's literally a percentage out there, and we'll probably talk about it more when we get to 100, of like 1% of podcasts making it to episode 100. So it doesn't seem like a huge achievement to everyone else, but it is a pretty big thing to make it that far. Anywho, go give it a listen. They've got previous guests on throughout their years that have helped them build their podcast to where they've got it to. And yeah, that's probably my podcast rec for the week. Audiobook, I went back and listened to, I've actually got it back here somewhere. There, Tom Segura's one. Tom Segura, again, arguably my favorite comedian, released a book a few years ago during the pandemic, I'd Like to Play Alone, Please. And it's not my favorite book in history. I would have preferred a different angle from him of more or less like his come up. So each chapter is pretty much just a funny story, and it's a bit all over the shop and stuff, right? But there is a chapter towards the end where he focuses in on his career. And when I read it a couple of years ago, it jumped out to me. Like, I posted it on my Instagram story. I was like, this is fucking the best thing I've ever ever read. Sorry, I didn't write it. And so I just listened to the audiobook literally yesterday, and hearing him say it with his own voice was just so much more insane. And it was more or less him saying, I'm literally no one special. There's nothing special about me. And when you look at him, he's literally your average looking bloke. A little bit chubby, he's balding, he's got a beard, he's just a generic looking bloke, right? And he goes, yeah, nothing was done for me. No one wanted to give me a podcast. I started my own. I built my own studio. No one wanted to give me a comedy special. I filmed and recorded my own and sold it eventually. And he was just saying, like, all this shit, almost the industry was saying no to him. And he's like, I just fucking did it myself. And now he's one of the biggest touring comedians of our time. So, yeah, it was sick to hear those words come directly from his mouth. If you want to go and listen to just that one chapter, it is towards the end. I took a screenshot just so I would remember. The chapter, What's the Theme? Go give that a crack. Listen to the end of it, and it's sick. What else did that's all I listened to. Let's get to the movie. This was sold to me. So the movie, new one on Netflix, I think it's sitting at like number 2 or something at this time. Under Paris. This was sold to me on TikTok and Instagram as the best shark movie since Jaws. Now, when I heard that and read that, I was like, that is a big fucking call, right? But then when I started to think about it, I'm like, in reality, that's probably not that hard, right? Like, most shark movies that get released are completely unrealistic and just piles of shit. But I was like, okay, let's give this thing a listen. And I had to convince Nikita for 3 nights to watch this thing, right? And we finally got around to watching it. I think it was like Saturday. Oh, yeah, it was Saturday night when my gig fell through. I was like, let's just put it on. Now, I probably got 45 minutes into this thing and couldn't fucking stand it. I fell asleep in the end. I don't know how it finished. Nikita was like, I was like, did it finish okay? And she's like, look, it was still complete shit. The ending was okay, but the only reason they ended it that way was for like number 2. And I'm like, there's no fucking way I am watching number 2. The other thing that pissed me off, it didn't really piss me off, but it was just annoying. And this is just something like for me personally, is it's a movie shot in English. No, it's a movie shot in French, right? But they've dubbed English over it, so the mouths don't line up. Oh, it fucking irritates me. And I think it comes from like back in the day when we used to get pirated movies and shit like that. Every third movie used to be bad for it. Just the voices lagging from the faces, or just like someone filming at the back of a cinema and the sound not quite coming through. It's one of my pet peeves when watching a movie. So I just could not fully invest in it. And that's my bad, I suppose. And you guys might go and watch it and go, James is on the crack pipe. He has no idea what the fuck he's talking about. All right, let's have a quick touch on UFC. Friday was a bad day to be Uncle Dana White. I've given him his flowers a million times on this podcast. I've also spoken a little bit bad on him, but let's sweep that under the rug. Friday morning, Dana has to come out and go, so this weekend coming, it was supposed to be Khamzat Chimaev versus Robert Whittaker. Robert Whittaker, the Australian fucking beast. Everyone gets behind him. He's a legend of the sport, right? Khamzat Chimaev, one of the deadliest killers we've seen come to the UFC in recent years from memory. This dude, he had a fight a couple years ago where he picked up his opponent, walked over to Dana White in the middle of a fucking cage fight and started having a conversation with Dana. Like, what the fuck? He's an animal. He's a dead set killer. Anyway, comes out Friday. Khamzat Chimaev is out with an injury. So the fight is off for this weekend, but then Dana comes on a couple of hours later and he goes, I hated how this was all handled, right? Now, as I said, the original fight was Khamzat Chimaev versus Robert Whittaker. Robert Whittaker was scheduled to fight. He's got no issues. He's got no injury. He's showed up for the UFC every time they've asked him to for the last 10 years or so. He's probably the longest running Australian / New Zealand to be in the UFC, I'd say. And the way that Dana did him dirty like this, I hated to watch this. Dana comes on and he's like, we've got to fill in for this weekend's headline match. It is now going to be, and I've got to look at his name up here, Alaskarov. That's right. And again, I've seen this guy fight. He's an absolute wrecking machine. Another Russian. He's 15-1. That's his record at the moment. So Dana comes on and he goes, the new fill-in for the headline fight this weekend is Alaskarov, and he will be fighting Robert Whittaker. And it's like, okay, obviously Robert Whittaker was already scheduled to fight. So now this guy is not only pulling the UFC a favour, he's pulling Dana a favour. But Dana goes on to go, yep, so we offered Alaskarov to everyone in the division, and the only one manly enough or brave enough to take it was Robert Whittaker. And it's like, cunt. Robert Whittaker's been in training camp for the last 12 weeks. He's on fucking destination for the fight this week. He's been the only one ready to fight this week. So this guy, is doing... Robert's doing this guy a fight by giving him... he doesn't have to fight now. And I'm pretty sure the UFC still has to pay a percentage of his purse because his opponent pulled out. So technically speaking, old Bobby Knuckles could fly home still with a little bit of money in his pocket and, be sweet with it. But I just hated how that was handled, how it played out that old Bobby Knuckles was the one filling in when he was scheduled to fight the whole time. So again, Dana, I don't like to shit on you. I don't want you to do one of those clips where you get, we showed a month or so ago, where you clip up all these podcasts talking shit. But that was a shitty thing to do. The rest of that card, there's big names on it, but nothing majorly that I'll be tuning in for, unless I've got nothing else happening on Sunday. But 303, this was the other thing that came out on Friday. UFC 303, Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler. I've touched on it the last couple of weeks. Basically crumbled to pieces on Friday. Dana comes on again after all that just went down that we just spoke about. And he goes, big news, McGregor Chandler is postponed / off. He didn't say off, but I mean, we're all alluding to it that this could be the fight that never happens. Almost like Ferguson Khabib back in the day. So the fight has been postponed due to an injury to Conor McGregor. I believe it's a leg injury again, which sucks to hear considering that's how his last fight ended. He snapped his leg in half. Anyway, let's not dwell on it too much. Apparently it's going to happen. They're just trying to find a date where his leg heals up and they don't already have a main event booked. But to fill in, absolute fucking beast, Alex Pereira, who's been in the UFC since 2021 and has already had 5 title fights. He's won the titles in 2 weight divisions. He's an animal. He's actually just coming off the back of like a tour in Australia at the moment where he's doing, seminars and shit like that. And that's when he got the call and he's like, yeah, I'll fucking fight in a couple of weeks. So Alex Pereira is stepping in for a rematch with Jiri Prochazka for the title. It's a rematch that happened a few months ago. But they're both like Alex Pereira is like from the Brazilian forest or some shit. And Jiri Prochazka is just another, he like calls himself a samurai. He's got a little man bun and they're both light heavyweights. So they're huge people. So again, it's an okay fight. We've seen it before. Like I said, it's a rematch. It's not jumping out to me too much. I'll probably still buy it because it'll be a sick card. But yeah, pretty insane that Pereira's put his hand up again to save the UFC. The other one, Jamal Hill is out with an injury. He was supposed to be fighting Carlos Ulberg, who's a New Zealand bloke, trains with Alexander Pereira. Fuck me, not Alexander Pereira. Israel Adesanya and all the other sort of people over there from City Kickboxing. So he's another absolute beast. This dude looks like he's chiseled out of stone. Jamal Hill pulls out and we're like, fuck, what's going to happen to Ulberg? Because he was a fill-in for Jamal Hill's original opponent. But the UFC has dropped him further down on the card and given him Anthony Smith, which is he's a bit of a gatekeeper these days. He used to fight for the title back in the day. I think he fought John Jones a couple of times and obviously lost because John Jones is the best. So yeah, Carlos Ulberg will be now fighting Anthony Smith at 303, which I personally think is a much easier fight for him. So I'm kind of stoked for that. Puts him up into that title contention a little bit more than what he previously would have been. And Jamal Hill probably would have been a tough fight for him, to be honest. And the last one to fill in the co-main now that fell out on that one on 303, we've got Brian Ortega, who, again, fan favourite, versus Diego Lopez, who's a up-and-comer. Again, Brian Ortega, one of the favourites from back in the day, and he just seems to be... I hate to say this about fighters that like got me hooked into the UFC, but he seems to be on the decline. And I hate to fucking say it, and I hope this young kid coming up doesn't destroy him. But in saying that, Brian Ortega is one of the best jiu-jitsu practitioners in the world. Like that's said by jiu-jitsu greats. So if there's anyone that can take the flame away from this up-and-comer, it's probably Brian Ortega, and I fucking hope he does, to be honest. So that's my little UFC recap. Don't have any other sports because all other sports are fucking shit. My premature premise for the week, I didn't really have one, but I've been trying to write something on this recently, so I thought I'd come and speak it onto here. And it's more of just a concept / premise at this stage. But I find it funny that when you're a kid, so as you're a kid, you're like, I fucking hate bedtimes, right? Like mum's always got this bedtime, like 7 o'clock, 7:30, whatever it was for you guys, I don't know. And like that's when you've got to go to bed. That's your bedtime, blah, blah, blah. And then you grow up, you become like a teenager or a young adult, and you find a partner, like a girlfriend or a wife, whatever, and you're like, oh, I'm a grown-up now. I can go to bed whenever the fuck I want. But then your partner has this like inbuilt clock in the back of their head where if you go to bed too early, you're a cunt because you just left them staying awake by themselves. Or if you want to stay up late, you're a cunt because they're fucking tired or not feeling well. I don't fucking know. But I just thought that was a funny concept or premise that no matter where you're at in your life, you've got this bedtime, and then when you get married, it's this unwritten bedtime of like the 1 minute period that your partner is happy to go to bed, and it's the period before they're too tired or not tired enough. So yeah, I have written something a little bit on that, probably a lot better than what I just spoke into existence, but that's basically the premise. So come to one of my shows and watch that play out eventually. Here's our motivational clip for the week. Now, this, technically speaking, isn't a motivational clip, so to speak. So I've got a little something after this one. But this is the clip I spoke about last week of the lead singer from Linkin Park, Chester Bennington, who a couple of years ago took his own life. But this was him on a podcast or a radio show, like coming up to that stage, I suppose. And I spoke about it last week. I was in a bit of a dark spot last week saying my head is not a good spot to be for anyone else. So let's play what he had to say, and then obviously we can have a small chat after.
I have a hard time with life sometimes.
Right.
Sometimes it's great, but a lot of times for me, it's really hard. I know that for me, when I'm inside myself, when I'm in my own head, it gets this place right here, this skull between my ears, that is a bad neighborhood. And so when I'm in that, like my whole life gets thrown off. Like if I'm in there, like I don't say nice things to myself. Like there's another Chester in there that's like wants to take me down. And I find that it could be whether it's substances or whether it's behavior or whether it's like depressive stuff or whatever it is. Like if I'm not like actively like getting out of myself and being with other people, like being a dad, being a husband, being a bandmate, like being a friend, helping someone out. Like if I'm out of myself, I'm great. If I'm inside all the time, I'm horrible. I'm a mess.
But yeah, that related to me. I'm not sure if it relates to you guys as well, but yeah, especially like no matter how good things can be going, there's always just like that voice in the back of my head, just always trying to like claw me down, and it's a fucking shitty thing to talk about, I suppose. But he sums it up pretty well there. And obviously, I think everyone coming up has cranked Linkin Park as loud as they can through their stereo or in their car or stuff like that. Like, I distinctly remember, I've spoken about it before, I used to get shipped away, or whatever the fuck you want to call it, down to our family's farm at Gundawindi. And all of the people down there, they were country music, or if they were feeling adventurous, it was like AC/DC and like shit like that, you know what I mean? Like nothing crazy out there. And then one night we were driving into town and I got into my cousin's ute and he just cranked his stereo, and it was the first time I heard Linkin Park, and Jesus Christ, like the words were just so insane to hear as like, I don't know, a 11 or 12-year-old, I suppose I probably would have been. No, I probably before that. I don't fucking know. Around that time frame. It was just insane, and just to like now look back and go, fuck, maybe he was having a shitty day and he just wanted to crank this on the way to town to sink some piss. But yeah, it was nuts. So hopefully if anyone's feeling like Chester did in that video, reach out to me, send me a DM. As I've said before, DMs are always open. Anyone that reaches out to me, I always reply. There's people listening to this right now that can attest to that. I know there's a couple of you listening right now that do sort of message me weekly or fortnightly just to sort of check in and either tell me what's going on in your life or ask how I'm going, blah, blah, blah. But this, again, like I said, that wasn't really motivational. So I read this week. I didn't download the reel because it was just music playing behind it. But this was a funny motivational quote that I saw. Does a crackhead say, I can't get high today because I'm broke? No, they make it happen. Don't let a crackhead hustle harder than you. And I found that pretty fucking funny that, yeah, if a crackhead can do whatever the fuck they need to do to get their fix for the day, surely I can do whatever the fuck I need to do to get comedy happening or get a podcast out on time. So let's wrap it up this week. Shows for the week. This Saturday, the 22nd, I will be at Home of the Arts. Not last Saturday. Sorry again if you rocked up in excitement to see me. But this Saturday, I promise I'll fucking be there. It'll be a sick lineup. It always is. I'm going to film that one as well. Somehow in some way, I'm going to film that one. It's almost like a cheat code, that room. It's hard to have a bad set. Tune in next week when I have the worst set of my life and go, I don't know what the fuck was up with the crowd that week. Anyway, that's my one gig of the week. Trying to get a lot more writing done. Got a big work week that's happening, a couple of installs and building and blah, blah, blah. You guys don't care. Send me your submissions through DM on Instagram at cantgetanyworsepod at cantgetanyworsepodcast on Instagram, sorry, or via email at cantgetanyworsepod@gmail.com. Let's get these communication pipes happening, and I will see you later.